You know, in order to think differently, it's useful to first understand how we think normally. There's a natural phenomenon that makes a wonderful metaphor to help us understand normal thinking. Come step with me outside on the patio and I'll show you. The condo where I live here in Roswell, Georgia, is built up on a cliff looking down over an area called Vickery Creek. It rained pretty heavily last night. You can probably hear the water rushing downstream. Rain falls randomly over the town of Roswell, but the hills and valleys organize that rain into streams, like Vickery Creek, that then flow into the Chattahoochee River. Creativity author Edward de Bono suggests that our minds organize information and process language in much the same way that hills and valleys process rainwater into a creek. Have you ever heard anyone speak in a language that you didn't understand? It was just random sounds, wasn't it? A bit like the rain falling randomly over a landscape. But if someone speaks in a language that you do understand, your mind takes those random sounds and organizes them into a stream of thought, a mental image of what's being talked about. Let's say it's the 1970s, and I say, let's talk about a telephone. Telephone. As soon as I say the sounds, your mind knows what I'm talking about. It conjures up a picture. What's in the picture? What's in the valley of the telephone? Well, it's an instrument. It's got a base that's plugged into the wall. There's another cord between the base and the handset. The handset's a long, narrow thing because it needs to stretch from your ear to your mouth. You dial numbers on it either with a rotary dial or a push button. That's what a telephone is. So if someone were designing telephones back in the 1970s, they might decide to make it a different color, slightly a different shape, but it would have all those aspects that I just mentioned. Why? Because that's what a telephone is. That's what's in the mental valley. But notice that you can begin to challenge some of those things that are in the mental valley. What if we cut the cord? Suppose we cut the cord between the base station and the handset. Well, that's the advent of the first kind of portable phones, which were just a handset that was in radio communication with the base station. Notice the handset was still long and narrow. The push button was mounted on the handset. Suppose we challenge the idea that the base station has to be plugged into the wall. Now we've got a mobile phone, a radio transmission, if you will, between the telephone company and a truly handheld device. But again, those first mobile phones were long and narrow and had physical buttons on the instrument. Well, does it have to be long and narrow? It doesn't fit my pocket very well. Let's think differently about it. Oh, suppose I kept it long and narrow, but I folded it over. Remember the flip phone? Does it have to have buttons on it? Oh, touchscreen technology came along and there went the buttons. A telephone, you use that for verbal audio communication. Is that the only thing you could use it for? What if you could send a text message on it? Well, if you're going to be able to send a text message, what other functions of a computer might you be able to do? What if it could process your email? Remember the first Blackberries? They actually had physical buttons to push in a typewriter keyboard kind of layout. Well, I'm carrying a phone in my pocket, but I'm also carrying a device because I like to listen to music. What if we could take the music, digitize it, and put it on the phone? Now you've got a single device. Do you notice how each of these innovations selects a concept or two that's common in the mental valley of the telephone, and it simply challenges it and asks, what if? How could you? That process of recognizing what's in your mental valleys, accepting it as the way it has always been, but challenging and asking, Does it have to be that way, though? What if? How could you? That process is the basis, it's the essence of thinking differently.